Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny Programme Committee. Start off with apologies for absence. I've got an apology off Councillor Sarah Keaton. Anybody other apologies? No? Okay. For the benefits of those who joined the meeting online, I'm going to ask people in the Gloucester room to introduce themselves so everyone knows who's here. So I'm Councillor Peter Black, I'm the chair, and I'm going to my left here to Michelle.
I'm Michelle Robertson, Scrutiny Officer.
Sarah Lackamy, I'm Head of Digital and Customer Services.
Julian Morgans, I'm Head of Revenues and Benefits.
Councillor Wendy Lewis, Wenalaeth Ward.
Councillor Sandra Joy, Uplands and Brynmel.
Good afternoon, Samantha Woon, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you all for that. Any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest at all? No? Okay.
Chair, could I add Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams for apologies?
You may indeed, Lyndon. And I've got Francesca who wants to speak. Have you got a declaration, Francesca?
Sorry, Chair. I just advise really. I sit on the committee that's sort of been questioned. I don't know if that's something I do have to declare or if that's absolutely fine to continue as normal. I just thought I would flag that up.
That should be fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay. I haven't got a solicitor here, but on my view, that's fine. And Peter May, you want?
Yes, I'm a signatory to the call-in on the agenda. Basically, it's a constitutional exercise. I'll probably declare personal on that. Is it okay to stay?
That's not. Yeah, it's not even an interest, Peter. To be honest, it's just part of normal business. So
right, fine. Okay.
You can declare it if you wish.
No, I won't then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Nobody else? No. Okay. In that case, I shall move on to minutes of the previous meeting. So I can just find them on this machine here. Right, minutes of the last meeting, which is on the 16th of January as a correct record. So on page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. Everyone happy that that's the correct record? Okay, thank you very much. Item 5 is public question time. I don't think we have any public questions at all. No? Okay, in that case, I shall move on to item 6, which is the calling of the Cabinet decision on the Customer Charter and Service Standards Framework. Present, I don't know if Andrea Hopkins is here. Oh, can we add to the apologies? Sorry, Councillor David Hopkins sends apologies. He's unfortunately not very well. So, but is that Andrew? So, can I welcome Councillor Andrea Lewis, who is Cabinet Member for Service Transformation, and she's supported by Sarah Lackenby and Julian Morgans, who've already introduced themselves. In accordance with Council procedure, the committee is required to consider the concerns raised in relation to the Cabinet report, which was made and the decision made on the 18th of January, which has been called in by Councillor Sandra Joy and supported by 3 other councillors. The paper which you've got in front of us sets out the process, the nature of the call-in, the Cabinet report, and additional information which will be assistant to you. So and we've got the lead councillors and officers with an opportunity to speak. So I'm going to ask Councillor Joy to talk to her call-in first. Then I'm going to ask Councillor Andrew Lewis and the officers to respond. So, Sandra.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The call-in was made really based on one issue within this Customer Charter and Service Standards Framework. The issue is based on the time that is stated in that framework that it takes the council administration to process a free school meals application. This time is set at 28 working days. Now, that means in practice that for the person involved in this, it is nearly 6 weeks. And actually, this is less about administration and more about the fact that we are talking about children who may in that time be adversely affected and go hungry. So I'll start with a context first of all as to why this is so important. It isn't just a line in a document here. It has a huge impact on the lives of our most vulnerable citizens, the children from poor families. We subscribe to the UNCRC. We all know that Article 24, to see if I'm going to be specific, states that for all children there must be the provision of adequate nutritional foods. It's a basic human right. The single line in this customer charter is actually saying it's okay for a child not to eat anything between 8:30 and 3:30 for up to 6 weeks. And that sounds dramatic, but I'll come back to it. For a claimant, a parent or a carer to be eligible, they have to be on universal credit and earning less than £7,400 a year, or there are some other benefits that they can access as well. The point is that the children of this claimant are going to be in a very difficult situation. The parent or carer is struggling. They might have several children. What they can't do is they can't simply manage for 6 weeks, because if they could, they wouldn't be applying for these free school meals. I would also add that the free schools eligibility doesn't just give them a meal, just as an aside, it also gives them access to a grant which will enable the parent or carer to buy school uniforms, sports equipment, and lots of other things as well. So what actually happens in practice? And if you've been on the ground and seen what happens, then you would understand why this is so important. More often than not, a child that doesn't have this access to a free school meal and knows that it's not going to eat for that length of time will actually truant school for 6 weeks or so. That's enough said on that, because you understand the impact of a child missing school for that length of time. If you are someone who stood in that school and listened to children talking, and you hear a child saying, I'm on a diet, or, oh, I'm going getting my place in the computer room, or I'm going practicing my football skills, rather than going into that lunchtime queue, you know that that child is avoiding food for a reason. So they're not going to necessarily talk to people. They're not going to necessarily talk to their mates. They are going to put up with this. And my question is this a reasonable thing to do to a child for 6 weeks? Do we really need this length of time to process an application? And the answer to that is bluntly, no, we can do better. If you look at the research or look on, at different county councils across the country, you will see that many of them will say 5 working days is their charter, their target. 1 or 2 of those councils actually manage to do this instantly. So a child or a parent or a carer can come in a morning, process an application online, and by lunchtime that child's having its food. Specifically, Manchester City Council do this, as do Hampshire. So the point I'm making is there are alternative options to the ones that we are using. And hopefully for that reason, you'll see why I'm making a big issue of this, is children are suffering, but it is solvable, and it is on the onus of the adults around them to be able to address this. Now, back to the process, having given the context. I'm a member of the Corporate Services and Financial Resilience STC. My understanding of those committees is that we are a critical friend to the Cabinet. So we take policies and proposals and we have a look at them, dissect them, and we make judgments or we make comments or constructive criticisms about them. And that information is fed into the Cabinet so that they're not in isolation making those kinds of decisions. The Customer Charter and Service Standards Framework was brought to that STC on the 12th of December. And I did raise that, and it is noted in the minutes that I raised that. And it was said in those minutes that the head of service would, one, liaise with other heads of service, but also take it to the Cabinet. I don't know what happened on that day, on the 18th of January, but it just did not get, the information did not get to the Cabinet. So the Cabinet made a decision that I honestly think they might have reconsidered had that information been shared with them. I've got some huge concerns that the decision made was unsafe because they simply didn't see that particular aspect of the customer services charter. I do think they would have noted it as a significant concern if this had been known at the time and if that information had been actually highlighted to them at the time. If I'm honest, my focus is on these vulnerable children. Because of the tight deadline, because that was brought to them on the 8th, or should I say the council passed, the cabinet passed that on the 18th of January. I wasn't alerted to that until the 20th of January when I got an email from the head of service saying that the situation was as it was and it wasn't going to be changed. So my immediate reaction was to look at what alternatives I could put in place in order to question this decision. And the first one, of course, was to call in the procedure, which I had to do because of the tight deadline. The second thing I did was to communicate with the chief executive. And we had an email dialogue. And to be fair, what we discussed is now he's come up with some ideas and a sort of a way forward where that 28 working days has been reconsidered. And I think we've got something that is a work in progress that we can start to look at. And certainly you've got that, I believe, in your papers. So that is something that I hope that you will certainly look at. It's really good, but it's a short time scale we had to look at that. And we're getting there, but it's not enough. You know, just to go back to people like, you know, councils like Manchester City Council, they can do it instantly, and I would question that. So what do these children of ours need? They need us to have to review that decision. The cabinet need to have that opportunity to reconsider that decision, possibly to temporarily adopt the chief executive's proposal, but with a commitment to investigate how other local authorities are able to achieve what they can achieve and to consider whether we can investigate those systems as soon as possible. So in terms of the process here, I need you to give this back to Cabinet to reconsider it. And if you do give it back to Cabinet, I actually think they will reconsider it. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I think it's an oversight, and I think it's got some significant consequences for our vulnerable children. I think it undermines what this council is really about. We subscribe to UNCLC, to the rights of the child. We do have a poverty agenda where we are looking to combat poverty. And that single line in that particular document says it's okay for children to not eat for up to 6 weeks, whatever the admin, whatever the reasons, whatever is going on behind it. Other councils don't need to do it, and we are doing it. So I would like you to look at it, and I would like you to pass it back to Cabinet so that they can reconsider that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Andrea?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Joy. I was at the Service Transformation Committee and heard the comments made at that point. There's a few points for clarification that I feel I should make today. The first one is we all absolutely care about child's welfare and the access to free school meals. And I think there's been a misunderstanding with the deadline that was reported in the papers, which has since been clarified. I know the chief executive responded to you, but actually I was involved with officers looking at those timelines and the reasons behind the timelines. So I believe you have had an update from officers since then about the rationale of why that deadline has changed. The reason why it was set at 28 days initially was because the eligibility benefits that a family are on to make sure that they are able to access free school meals sometimes isn't easy for us to qualify without having to go to DWP. So when we do go to DWP, that can take up to 28 days for them to respond to us to say, yes, the family are on a qualifying benefit. Yes, they can access free school meals. And then that is backdated duly from the time that the family applied. That is a deadline in terms of when it sits with DWP that is outside of council's control. What is within council's control is if we are aware that a family are already through different means, for example, council tax or housing benefit, and they've provided evidence previously for qualifying benefits, we can instantly say that family are eligible for free school meals because we know we've got the evidence to prove that, and so we can put them practically instantly. And I know we've got Julian and Sarah with us today to give the officer expertise on timescales for that. So sometimes applications are turned around within 1 or 2 days, but sometimes they take longer because we don't have that evidence of that qualifying benefit to hand. We have to ask DWP. That can take time. And oddly, DWP don't have any deadlines that they work to in their customer charter at all. So they can effectively take as long as they like. We haven't got that luxury and we wouldn't want that luxury. So the proposed amendment to that deadline of 7 working days is within the council's gift. So once we know that a family are on a qualifying benefit, we will take up to 7 working days, but no more than 7 working days. So we will obviously strive to deal with that application as quickly as we possibly can. And if that's within 1 or 2 days, that's great. But we're trying to be pragmatic in terms of the timescales. But if we can do it quicker, we will. In terms of the process that you've related to in terms of cabinet decision. So as I said, I was at the STC when this was debated and you raised your points and your concerns, which were duly noted by Sarah. And as I say, Sarah's here today to elaborate further. But due to Christmas leave, the issues weren't taken up immediately. But just to remind members that this customer charter and strategy are to be implemented on the 1st of April, not immediately from cabinet decision. And on the 1st of April, it's implemented. But as I stated at cabinet, it's not a closed document that will sit on a shelf. It's a living document that will be updated accordingly and will always be a live document that will be altered and amended to benefit and to improve our customer service. So it was always intended that your concerns would be raised with Julian and his team and that they would seek to address that, which I hope they have come to a better outcome that is acceptable. But it doesn't change. Cabinet's decision was to approve a living document that can be amended at any time. So I'm happy to take advice from the legal officer, but I don't believe it needs to go back to Cabinet for further decision. It's something that we can just amend immediately and update immediately. So the fact that it's a living document is it suggests that we can keep changing deadlines to try and improve the service that we provide to our customers, which is very important to us. We will also continue to consult with different groups as well to try and improve our customer strategy and service. And I know from correspondence that I've received from the committee that there's going to be a separate session and workshop looking at the customer charter, which we welcome. And also there are concerns around contact to the council in terms of telephony contact, which we can, if appropriate, we can address today in the meeting, or we can look to address that in the workshop. But just wanted to give the level of assurance that we do care greatly about our children, particularly children living in poverty. We absolutely want to make sure that if they're eligible, as soon as we can possibly make sure that they get access to the free help that they need. And you're absolutely right. The free school meals is a grant which gives access to other grants, and we are very mindful of that. But we do also have to make sure that the help is received by the people who need the help. And those are people who are on the eligible benefits and are, eligible recipients of that support. And in order to do that, sometimes we do have to go to DWP to do that. So I'm hoping that gives a level of assurance. We did listen. I was in the meeting, did take on board your comments, and it was always planned that we were going to address that before implementation on the 1st of April. And Chair, I'm happy to bring in Sarah and Julian to give any further details. And Julian is also here for any technical questions as well.
Okay, I've just looked at the recommendation of the cabinet, which was the second one, delegates authority to directors and the relevant cabinet member to make any minor changes to the standards. So I don't think it needs to go back to cabinet. I'll come back to you in a minute, Sandra. I don't think it needs to go back to cabinet at all. That sounds like you can make that if this committee is happy with that. I have a question for Julian. Do you I don't know if you're going to have these figures to hand, but obviously if they're on housing benefit or council tax benefit, it's virtually straight away because we already have the information. Do you know roughly how many or what percentage of children who are on free school meals where their parents will not be in receipt of housing benefit or council tax benefit?
I don't have that figure with me, I'm afraid. It's increasingly, as housing benefit is run down, as universal credit replaces it, the numbers getting lower and lower and lower. What I can do, I can take you through the process of dealing with free school meal applications, if you like. I think that'll give you some reassurance that we deal with them. To be honest, we deal with them in a couple of days. First of all, I'll explain why initially. Is that okay to progress on that?
Yeah, please.
So initially, why did I go for 28 days initially? It's to tie, but basically we have two kinds of application for free school meals. We have one which is a standalone application. Somebody just says, I want to apply for free school meals. And we have applications that are linked to a housing benefit or council tax reduction application. When we got involved, let's say the Department of Revenues and Benefits got involved in free school meals eligibility, we know there was a lack of take-up, which was quite a shock. So what we did, we brought in, we made our housing benefit and council tax reduction application a joint application for free school meals as well. So it meant that when you applied for one, you were automatically applying for the other. Welsh Government require us to have an application for free school meals. So even if I could look at a family's circumstances based on the information I already hold, I can't just say you can have free school meals. They have to apply. So that was a way of sort of through the back door getting an automatic application and increase in take-up, which it did. Our application form now requires people to opt out of free school meals if they don't want them, which obviously happens less than people forgetting or deciding not to claim. So we have 28 days in our standard to process an application for housing benefit. There's always to and fro with people when we process a housing benefit application, and we might always be waiting for information from the DWP as well. So the 28 days are sort of a reasonable date. We will do it quicker than that. At the moment, we're doing it in just under 19 days. So although that is our standard, we're doing better than that. So that's the first type of application we have, the ones that are tied to housing benefit application. And that's why I went for 28 days to match, because they're inextricably linked. We also have the standalone applications for people who apply for free school meals. And they just come into us every day and we start working them straight away. The big thing for us is how quickly we can make the check that whether people are entitled to free school meals or not. To make that decision, we use the Department of Education's eligibility check-in service. And what that means is we drop in the details of the applicant, name, address, national insurance number, some other stuff. And then that gives us one of 4 results. So the big thing is how quickly can we do that? So for the paper, for our housing benefit and council tax reduction applications, they come into us every day, either in a paper form or online. They initially go to our, what we call our verification team, and their job is to gather all the information that is necessary to make an assessment of housing benefit or council tax reduction. Could be proof of earnings, proof of benefits, proof of rent, could be anything really. At the same time as they start doing that, they also require to log the application on our system, and that's what kicks off our count of our number of days to process a claim. So at the time they log that application, which is usually on the first day or the second day after the application is received, they also pass it to the free school meals team. I say the free school meals team is 2 people. We're not as big as Manchester, we've only got 2 people, plus extra support when necessary. They pass it to them and they will do the check with the eligibility check-in system. So that's really within 2 days for the ones that are coming in with a HB form. We have a similar process for the standalone applications. Standalone applications for free school meals are made via our website for the most part these days. There's a paper form available for people who need it. And again, they come to us daily. Applications are downloaded and again, they go straight to the free school meal team. And we make the check. So again, we're usually doing it quite often the day after, usually within 2 days. So that check is made. Now, when we make the check, we can get one of 4 outcomes. Oh, thank you. So I'll have to refer to my notes for that because there are 4 different outcomes. Sometimes we get a nice straight yes to entitlement to free school meals, which is great. So as I say, the applications come in, we've checked it within 2 or 3 days, we get a yes. We then send an email to the applicant to confirm entitlement and from what day. And we also send the information to the data team in education because they are responsible for updating the school systems and telling the schools that this child is now entitled to free school meals. So that's done within 2 or 3 days. We also get the outcome that the person isn't found on the eligibility checking system. So that could mean there is just, usually that for us means no, there's no entitlement to free school meals. But what we'll do is go back to the applicant and say, look, you applied for free school meals on the basis you were entitled to this benefit. We can't prove your entitlement to that benefit. Are you absolutely sure? Now, it could be that somebody's misunderstood the criteria. There's a number of benefits out there of similar names. So they get in one and not the other. And one gives them free school meal entitlement and one doesn't. Or it could just mean there's an error in the system. But we go back to them by email or phone or letter or whatever is appropriate. Usually probably by email, I'd say, is the most frequent, and explain to them what's going on. And then there's a bit of to and fro in then with the applicant while we clarify what the circumstances are. It's either they've misunderstood and they're not entitled. We'll redirect them back to our website and say, look, can you check the criteria so you know exactly what the rules are? And so there's a bit of to and fro in there. But the simple fact is usually 9 times out of 10, that no is correct to free school meal entitlement. Then we get a not found, and there's 2 kinds of not found. There's a not found with check the data that we've inserted. So that could be spelling mistake in the name, 1 digit wrong in the national insurance number. And the check-in system is thinking, oh, that could be Mrs. Evans, but I'm not sure. So again, we have to go back to the applicant then. And there's a bit of to and fro again until the point we can make a decision one way or the other after a successful or unsuccessful check. Again, the initial check takes place in 2 days. So it depends how long the person takes to come back and forth to us. The last one is not found, but penned, and this is the one that causes the problems. Penned usually means there's an application pending for one of the qualifying benefits. Universal credit usually takes a minimum of at least 5 weeks for the DWP to process because they have what they call an assessment period of a month at the beginning when people have to provide details of their earnings. So you will never get a universal credit application done quicker than 5 weeks, really. So that's 35 days. So what I'd done in setting 28 days, I was being a bit optimistic, really. So I do appreciate the sort of the nudge to look at this again. What we've suggested now is more accurate in that what we're saying is we do it within 7 days of being able to confirm eligibility. Now, I'll be frank, we need to be very clear that that's not 7 days of receiving the application. That's 7 days of us getting confirmation of entitlement to the qualifying benefit. We've done our checks within 7 days. We've done our checks within 2 or 3 days, probably maybe even 1 day. But it's when do we get that successful outcome and notification and confirmation from the check-in service? And that, as Councillor Lewis has already said, is totally out of our gift. I can't do anything about that. If we get a penned, we check periodically. We were checking weekly. We didn't find it speeded the process up anymore because of this lengthy period at the start of the universal credit claim. So we check fortnightly now. But if somebody comes to us and says, DWP have sorted out my claim, we'll check instantly. We have a very good relationship with the schools. If the schools come to us and say, Mrs. Evans has told, sorry, I keep talking about Mrs. Evans, Mr. Smith has said that his claim's been sorted, we will make the check again instantly. So we react quickly to the information comes through. But what I can't get away from is when the eligibility check-in system won't get or can't give us an answer for whatever reason. When the 4 members from the Uplands area raised this, I thought I was obviously a bit concerned. So I got hold of one of the primaries in the Uplands area, Brimble Primary, spoke to the team there that deal with free school meals. Any issues? They have no issues with us at all. We respond quickly. They're happy with the service. Education generally are happy with the service. And, as a tax collector, I do get the odd complaint. I don't get complaints about free school meals. So, overall, I'm pretty happy that we do provide a good service. As I say, we normally check in these within a day or 2. I think from my point of view, I wouldn't want to go less than 7 days because like any section, if I get hit with about the flu, my resources are going to be stretched. But I think we already do it within 2 and 3 days anyway. I know we do it within 2 or 3 days anyway. So we're providing a good service. So if we crept up to 4 days, the schools are still going to know very, very quickly, and really within the time limits that you mentioned Manchester are achieving. So I think we're doing as good as Manchester, really. But we weren't shouting about it in a loud voice, and perhaps we should have. That 28 days was slightly misleading. But I do need to be clear that it's not 7 days of receiving the claim. It's 7 days of being able to confirm eligibility.
Can I just confirm then, Julian, universal credit, we rely on DSS to tell us if someone's on universal credit. Is housing benefit now being rolled up into universal credit?
Yeah, in part. So over the coming year, actually, they're going to start to manage migration in this area, or they've started to manage migration, but up in the managed migration.
That means there'll be more and more pupils who we may not know whether on benefits because we haven't got our own checks for the housing benefits.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we relying more and more on the eligibility check.
We do manage the council tax reduction scheme ourselves.
We do, yeah.
So we that's instant. We know instantly they're on that. The housing benefits is most probably going to be. Are they tend to be roughly the same? Do you tend to have same numbers, or people on housing benefits and not council tax reduction, or vice versa?
No, it depends on the circumstance of the tenancy. There's roughly 21,000 people on council tax reduction, and housing benefit. I should know because the figures this week. It's something like 8,000, I think. But it's what is happening is working age people will be migrating to universal credit unless they're living in supported accommodation. Right. And then pension age people will be remaining on housing benefits.
So the chances are that because you have so many on council tax reduction, the vast majority of children will be caught through that particular benefit.
We'll have an awareness of the income entitlement, but what it means is if they apply for council tax reduction, it's the new awards are the key here, I think. As the new application for council tax reduction comes through, we make the check with the eligibility checking service straight away within a day or so anyway, probably before we've processed the council tax reduction claim. So is
council tax reduction a qualifying benefit for free school meals?
No,
it isn't.
No.
But
okay. Neither is housing benefit. No. But
just universal credit.
No, well, there's a few of them. I think,
okay. No, I don't go for the list.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just trying to be clear on that.
Yeah, no, the reason we might be able to do the housing benefit and council tax reduction ones quicker is because we've already got proof of the income, because we've already obtained it to calculate those benefit entitlements.
Okay, and you must know the answer to this one. In terms of the individual schools, when a pupil is applied for free school meals and there's a time lapse before they get it, do the schools tend to make allowances and assist them that, or do the children literally have to make do?
Well, it is something for education colleagues to answer. I asked that question. I thought you might ask, so I have got some information.
What do they tell you?
They tell you. So what they've said is in the cases where parents and carers are newly applying for benefits and a decision is awaited, they've told the schools that meals need to continue to be paid for, or the pupil should bring in a packed lunch, as we can't give a free meal without confirmation of eligibility. When eligibility is confirmed, they refund any meal payments back to the date that the entitlement to free school meals commences. They've intentionally arranged it that way as they don't want to give a free meal for potentially around 6 weeks. Or more, depending on the DWP, and then find out that the person isn't eligible, the child isn't eligible, and then they've accrued a large amount of debt that needs to be repaid back. And to be honest, again, as I said, refer back to my tax collecting duties as council tax collector. I understand prevention of debt. It's a sensible thing. What they're saying is that the catering staff, though, will always provide something like a sandwich and squash for anyone who doesn't have access to a meal on a particular day if the school thinks the parent will not pay for meals on that day. And also it's worth pointing out that universal free school meals will be out with all primary schools by the end of the summer term at the latest. So this issue is particularly relating to secondary school learners rather than primary school learners.
Okay. Is anyone else bring any questions at all? Any other questions? No, Sandra, do you want to respond briefly?
Yeah, just to say, first of all, Councillor Lewis, I totally agree with you. I have not got the monopoly on caring for children, in the sense that that's why I'm so convinced that if this had gone back to Cabinet, they would review that decision. That was the premise of this. And I also accept that, given the talking about the schools and the way the schools handle this internally, having been on the inside of all of that, is there's nobody in a school that would allow a child to starve for the day. the issue is that often they don't know about it until that process has been gone through, because the child won't normally make them aware of it. And that's what I was talking about in the context I raised. When I looked at the outcome from the Cabinet, what struck me was that this was a living document, but the comment made was that the relevant Cabinet members would make any minor changes. Now, I saw that as something minor, but then when I got the email back saying on the 20th, saying that things weren't going to be changed at that point, I thought this must be much more significant than a minor change. It must require far more work involved. So therefore, that's why I progressed the call-in. So I think a lot of it is to do with timescales. I think where we are at the moment with the Chief Executive's proposal and the email that's in your papers, I think it's very helpful. I've still got that one query in the back of my mind as to why somewhere like Manchester City Council can do this instantly. They've obviously got something that we haven't, but I also accept that where we are at the moment is a long way from that initial 28 days. And I think if you were a single parent looking at that customer charter and you've got 3 children and you're on benefits, if somebody told me as a single mum that I've got to wait 6 weeks before my children can have food in school, I'm not going to feel great about it, and I'm going to be very, very concerned. So the fact you're going to review that down to 7 days, I think as a single parent or as somebody who is on benefits, I think that would be far more easy for them to be able to accept and to think that they can send their children into school because they will be looked after.
Okay, I take it the criteria is the same in Wales and England for free school meals.
I wouldn't like to comment without checking, but probably yes, because I think we use
Yeah.
the eligibility checking service is common to both countries.
Yeah, I thought that was as well. I mean, I guess Manchester, I can't imagine Manchester have any easier time with DSS than we do. Maybe just they have a higher number of children on the qualifying benefits, which they're aware of or something.
Could be, or they make a decision, we'll give free school meals while the application's pending.
It could be, yeah.
Could be that.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
Hampshire have the same system.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe your committee could, as you're looking at policy, could maybe want to do some more investigation on that for in the future. Yeah. In the meantime, I just want to check with the legal officer. I suspect that this does fall under minor changes, and the Cabinet member is perfectly entitled to make this change as recommended by the Chief Executive.
The delegation was put in place to enable this to be, as Deputy Leader says, a living document that can be changed without going back to Cabinet all the time.
Okay.
And I think we just, the role of this call-in would just be to report to Cabinet what your view is as a committee, but the power is there for Cabinet already just to implement and to make changes.
Andrea, sorry.
Yeah, perhaps, Chair, it's helpful if I can confirm that I've been heavily involved in the proposed changing to this particular deadline. And I'm very supportive of the change, and I've no issue with doing this under delegated powers. So very happy to enact that in terms of changing the policy.
Okay. Right. In terms of the call-in, we have one of 3 responses. One, we can say we're satisfied with the Cabinet decision on the 18th of January, which clearly we're not. Secondly, we're not necessarily being satisfied, but we're not objecting to the Cabinet decision. And the third one is requesting that the decision be reconsidered in line with what the Chief Executive has set up there. So I'm going to suggest that the committee go with the third option and request the Cabinet member to amend the deadline in accordance with with what's in the Chief Executive's note, if that's acceptable. Yeah. So our committee happy with that proposal? I'm going to take silence as assent because clearly no one's saying anything. Peter May, sorry, Peter.
I agree with option 3, but on the on the condition that it's firmly minuted the undertaking that the Cabinet member has just given before you, which I believe would prevent it being an option 3.
I think all our minutes are quite firm, Peter. So yes, it will be minuted that is the decision of the committee.
Thank you for that recorded assurance.
Okay. Do I need a show of hands? Can everyone show the hands if they're in favour, please? Just to be on the safe side. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. So we've accepted that recommendation, and we're asking the cabinet member to carry out that amendment. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Andrea, and the officers. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, which is the Workforce Strategy Progress Report. Unfortunately, Councillor David Hopkins has come down with COVID and is not very well. So we have Rachel Davis, the Head of Human Resources and Service Centre, who is going to be taking the strain on her own this time. So welcome, Rachel. Would you like to introduce your report briefly? Assume we've read it.
Thank you. Yes, apologies for the volume of content that was attached to the agenda item, but I thought it was helpful to give the full background and context to the topic. Appendix A that's referenced in the report is obviously the copy of the workforce strategy that was approved by Cabinet in October 22, and it sets out our aspirations under 4 themes which are highlighted in the report under paragraph 3. And shortly after the strategy was approved, we started work on the transformation programme to sit alongside. And Appendix B in the report there shows the committee the 4 business cases that were to be pieces of work under the transformation umbrella. The Workforce and OD Transformation Programme Board was then established in December 22, and it meets quarterly to oversee both the transformation work and the workforce strategy objectives. And the Deputy Leader, Director of Corporate Services, myself and representatives from all directorates make up that board. There are around 40 objectives in the workforce strategy if you've had a chance to look through that, which we need to work through during the lifespan of the strategy. And the board's remit is to prioritise in what order we want to tackle each of those objectives, monitor the progress against them, and then oversee the transformation projects that complement that strategy. In addition to that board oversight, we also have opportunity to share a greater level of detail with the Transformation and Financial Resilience Committee and seek input into how our work can have added depth and value. And again, there is an appendix for you around the leadership and management key theme that was discussed last month in their January meeting. So having provided that backdrop, what I will do now is take you through Appendix C, which provides committee with the progress against each of our individual objectives for the 23-24 year. And I'll give a summary rather than go through each of them as that
Good
might
idea.
take some time. So work under the leadership and management theme has been successful. You can see that the objectives here are currently rated as being green. Since the agenda for this meeting was published, we were able to have a meeting last week with leadership and CMT, whereby I presented an organisational development offer for the organisation, and some of those objectives on that leadership and management theme featured in that discussion. So we are about to sign off objectives 1, 2 and 5, so they will turn blue and be complete, and we are due to complete the others at the end of the financial year. So we believe we've made good progress in that area. The second theme of workforce fit for the future is again mostly on track to be delivered by the end of the year. For example, we have a new agency contract in place from the 1st of April. That is complete. We have new workforce planning templates that are being worked through with our HR and OD business partners and heads of service. And our e-learning package is now up and running in Oracle Fusion. So all of these items will also turn blue and complete by the end of the year. However, you will see that there is an amber rated objective around developing optimal structures. This was written during the development of the strategy in the early part of 2022. However, it's probably not tangible or specific enough to be considered as a high quality objective. We know that we need to focus on workforce transformation out in our directorate so that we can continue to deliver high quality services to residents, but there isn't sufficient clarity on this particular objective around how that is going to be achieved in those directorates. So my intention would be to reframe this objective, make it more meaningful, more accountable, and then prioritise that for the early part of 24-25. And the programme board would work with directorate reps to commit to what those more specific actions look like that actually demonstrate how their individual workforce groups are going to be fit for the future. Committee members will also see that the third theme of employer of choice also has amber rated objectives relating to recruitment and selection, but it does have 3 green rated projects, which again will turn blue and complete by the end of the year.
The reason for the amber rating in the recruitment field is due to a couple of reasons and factors. As members will see in the transformation business cases, we do talk about a transformation piece within the HR and OD service, which is around delivering a more strategic, proactive HR function. So I commenced a review of the provision shortly after the strategy was developed and approved, because the existing offer wasn't able to give capacity for the 40 or so objectives within the workforce strategy to be delivered. And by splitting HR and OD into two distinct halves, so an employee relations half, which deals with people management issues that are reactive, and then a business partner function, which deals with proactive issues to support heads of service in their workforce planning, their succession planning, organisational redesign, etc. We would then have capacity freed up to be able to work through these projects in this strategy. This change piece, though, has obviously taken time to implement and also to upskill members of the HR and OD function in being able to carry out some new expectations in their roles. So there have been two pieces of training and development put in place for them. Local Government Association delivered some workforce planning training to those role members, and also the CIPD, Chartered Institute Personnel and Development, which is the professional body for the field of HR, have also just finished completing some organisational design training with these members of my team. So therefore, with the change piece that's been taking place, plus the work in some other areas of the workforce strategy objectives, recruitment has been an area that has just not been able to have made as much pace as we would have hoped. However, again, when shaping the 24-25 plan, I anticipate that these objectives will therefore roll forward and will be another high priority area. It could be questioned, I suppose, as to perhaps, well, why are they not even read if there hasn't been, very much movement at all on them? But I think my response to that would probably be, it would be possible for us to tick the box. We could carry out a review of the recruitment and selection policy by the end of the year. We could review our application process by the end of the year. But I think that these are really important areas that need to have the due time and attention paid to them to have a good quality outcome, rather than just trying to tick the box to say that our action plan has done here. So my preference, rather than doing a quick review by the end of the year, would be to give them meaningful time and attention and roll them forward into 24-25. And then finally, our fourth key theme of wellbeing and inclusion is predominantly on track. Objective 19 on the list is about to turn blue as well. We have a confirmed date in the calendar for decisions to be made at Leadership CMT in March. And then the majority of the actions within this theme will be complete. Although you will see one that's white. Unfortunately, since the drafting of the workforce strategy objectives, the corporate health standard is no longer an accreditation process that employers are able to go through. It's no longer supported, and unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, it's just not going to be achievable. I would note, though, that the objective just above that in relation to CQOSH, apologies for the acronym there, this is our occupational health accreditation and provision. So because it is a medically linked service that's in-house, we have to ensure that there are certain standards met. That accreditation has been achieved and completed this year. The two amber objectives are rated as such because, again, similarly to recruitment, whilst we could complete them in a tick box fashion, they just deserve more time and attention to be meaningful. Technically, the Workforce Equalities Group has been established and has met. So you might say that that was therefore blue and achieved. But actually, it doesn't mean that the purpose and the value and the impact from that group has been felt. Now that we have the strategic equality plan objectives out to public consultation, it would make sense to align the work of this strategy with that one, and then similarly carry forward these inclusion objectives into 24-25. So overall, we expect around 16 of the objectives to be complete by the end of the year, with one withdrawn, which gives us a rate of completion for 23-24 of 70%. The 6 remaining amber objectives will need to go to board for discussion as to whether they feature as our top priorities for the 24-25 programme, in addition, of course, to the new topics and initiatives that we have listed in the workforce strategy that we have yet to allocate to a specific year within the life cycle. And that concludes my very rushed summary. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. I think this introduction of blue colours in these things is a new thing. We had it this morning with finance and sort of rag plus blue, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple of questions, and I think Mike White's got some. Anybody else wants to ask a question, please put your hand up. On page 73, one of the actions is delivery of revised fit for purpose performance management approach via Oracle. I'm just wondering what that looks like, and how far from the chief executive down does that actually stretch?
Yes, of course. So Oracle Fusion, our new system, went live in April 23. It has a module called Goals and Performance within it. And there are a number of areas that we can therefore use, as you say, right from chief exec all the way down to grade 1 in the structure if we wanted to. Performance objectives can be entered into that system individually. And also the annual appraisal process is contained within that system as well. And we're able to use workflow to prompt managers of actions when they need to take them. So for example, workflow has gone out for the appraisal at the end of the 23-24 year to all managers who have direct reports. We're able to use reporting functionality within that module as well to inform directorates of compliance and engagement. So corporate services have been key test users of the new module since it launched, and in our PFM reporting on a monthly basis, we look at the levels of compliance and engagement, the number of check-ins that might be taking place, the percentage of team members who do have objectives in the system, etc. And we should be able to explore further development opportunities within the system for including things like understanding how many people are on track with their objectives or how many people might be behind. And that will enable us to have a greater handling of individual performance, but also then team performance, which will complement the overall corporate performance that is monitored.
So does every member of staff right down to grade 1 have an appraisal, or is it only certain grades?
Everyone is entitled and should be offered opportunity for appraisal and objectives. Yeah. They won't necessarily be individual for all members of the organisation. There will often be teams, so a collective of people will have a performance review with their manager, where they're doing probably very similar roles that have very standard job duties in their role.
Okay, I'm just used to civil service approach, you see, so I'm just trying to understand what happens here. Okay, Mike, Councillor Mike White, you've got a question on workforce strategy.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Thank you for a very comprehensive report. Obviously, within the introduction, the leader obviously says our staff are the main assets of the council. We value our staff. Can I take you to section 4, which is the organisational workforce and organised development transformation? The 5 goals of the workforce strategy are noted. And what I'd like to ask, as an organisation, do we seek investors in people accreditation, which may help our council being an employer of choice? Can departments, service units, teams put themselves forward to obtain this? If not, why not? We have many excellent teams delivering frontline services, mainly within the Police Directorate, for the citizens of Swansea, who don't always get the recognition they deserve. In what other ways is the council looking at this? I hope we caught all that.
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, Investors in People is an assessment process whereby an organisation can be accredited at different tiers, levels, against the set criteria that Investors for People set out. It can be a very costly exercise. It's based on headcount, and with an organisation of our size, it would possibly be upwards of £15,000 to £20,000 just to go through the accreditation process. They do then provide feedback on your strengths and areas for development or future consideration as part of that assessment. I think if we were coming towards the end of the workforce strategy that we've currently got, and we were looking to understand what might be our future needs and what areas have we perhaps not considered, that might be something for us to think about. At the moment, though, I think we've probably got a good idea and a good handle on the areas that we know we need to work on, and we've probably got quite a lot of actions that we can already build on, implement and introduce before needing to look for external verification of the quality of that. There's also value in us considering how our employees feel about working here themselves, perhaps more so than an external verification. And I think our employee engagement strategy is probably the best route forward to start with. That employee engagement strategy has been, it's in our leadership and management theme, and theme number 1 actually, and that's about ready to launch as well. There's a number of examples that go out, whether that's by council news, whether it's the chief executive's blog, praising departments by individual teams where they've done something great and there's a positive news story to share with the rest of the workforce. So I think we're not harmed by not having investors in people, and we probably need to work through the things we already know that we need to bring in before then looking for something else.
Mike, any question?
Yes, in regards to the appraisals for all our staff, I presume that this is done annually, and have you got then key performance indicators in place so you can measure exactly if you've seen any improvement within those services?
Yes, the appraisal is for the 23-24 year that we'll be looking to conclude probably by about May time. Each department will have different sets of KPIs on performance that they expect their individuals and their teams to be completing for the service they provide. As a corporate overview, have we set a performance indicator around the percentage of appraisals completed? I don't know whether perhaps that's your question. Do we have a target for that? But we haven't onboarded all departments into the Oracle Fusion system yet. So we need to get all departments on board, and then I expect we will work with CMT to establish a KPI around completion and compliance.
Okay.
What I meant was, once you know the results from 1 year to the following year, obviously you'll have indicators in place, but to measure that then, whether it's been a success or whether it does not.
Absolutely, yes. We would look to see improvement year on year.
Okay. Beth, you want to come in?
It's probably leading on a bit from Mike's, but yeah, it's a huge piece of work. So well done for all of that. But it's just the evaluation of it all, because it's huge. So I guess it is linked to the KPIs, but as a whole, sort of, through your board and things like that, what does the evaluation planning look like? Have you got kind of a solid baseline and things that you're measuring against, things like that?
I think we probably haven't set a baseline at the moment. I mean, my preference would be 100% completion to begin with. How realistic that is for people out in different directorates is probably for them to comment on. But as long as we see an improving journey and greater levels of compliance, greater levels of engagement, that should be quite quick. So I would hope by the 24-25 year, we're already seeing a significant jump in that. And then it's probably the right time to focus not on compliance. Again, there's the kind of tick box approach, but quality. So I would like very quickly to see us being able to look at, as I mentioned a moment ago, the percentage of objectives that are behind, that are not on track, and that will then help us understand where some key risk areas for us are and where we need to be pushing improvement. And also then, of course, the opposite side of that, which is the percentage of objectives that are being achieved within timescale, so that we can celebrate those success stories as well. So I think that will come fairly quickly on, but we need to push with the engagement and compliance first before we then move on to the quality.
Okay, Beth, I was going to ask this question because, I mean, you went through your rag and the different colours, and obviously blue it's completed, but they tend to be actions in terms of putting mechanisms into place. So in terms of the metrics, how you measure whether they're making a difference to the way the councils, I mean, I can think of one immediately, which is attendance and sickness levels. But what other metrics are you looking at to see how successful this strategy is?
So we have a a list on page 28 of the strategy, which talks about how will we know if we've been successful. I think in this first year that we've had the strategy and we've been working on implementing some of the initiatives, there is naturally going to be a period of embedding, and we won't know the impact of that probably until next year. So yes, you talk about attendance levels and, you know, yes, customer feedback, employee morale, all of those things will need to be taken into account. But for now, I would say that it's trying to actually implement and get some of these things up and running, and then we will be looking to assess the effectiveness of those in the end of the 24-25 year.
Okay. The other thing, I've lost my page. I was trying to find that page on page 75, I think it is. Yeah, 70 something or other. I got found it 74. The review of the application process so it is compliant with legislation and seen to be supported to applicants. So what is that going to look like? I mean, I know when I was in the Welsh Assembly, we introduced this scheme whereby we didn't look for qualifications, we looked at skill levels and gave so people could actually to try to get a more flat and equal process for people who, particularly in deprived communities. Are we looking at something like that?
I think everything and anything needs to be on the table, which is why I don't want to rush it for the end of March. And I think it's a bigger piece of work that needs to go on longer than that, hence the rolling forward to 24-25. At the moment, we have a process whereby everyone applies in the same way. It's a very traditional local government way of applying for a role within a council. We have a job description that's got a number of essential and desirable criteria, and we ask people to complete a supporting statement evidencing how they meet those essential criteria in order to be shortlisted. We're not necessarily taking into account the very diverse range of different types of work that the council offers to people, and accessibility in being able to perhaps apply for some of those roles. It might be an appropriate thing for us to consider, how do we use applications by CV, for example, particularly with people who've had help in order to put together their CV, but would very much struggle with the traditional approach we currently ask for. We don't recruit on a values-based basis. So our 3 council values, there's scope for us to consider how do we make sure the people that we are bringing into the organisation will demonstrate and reflect those values that we want our workforce to be showing in their everyday work lives. So there are a range of different ways in which we can be more progressive in our application process, and we need to do some research, look at some best practice, understand what's feasible as well for managers to be able to do, and bring the best to the front so that we can decide what might be a range of options in the way that we recruit. Because at the moment, recruiting a grade 12 manager and a grade 1 employee through the same way and process, it doesn't feel appropriate for our needs.
And what sort of timescale for that review?
When the board meet to agree the priorities for 24-25, I anticipate that it will be one of our first objectives. And it would need to be done within the first half of that year plan, I would say, but board will have that discussion and with all the other things that are on the list and decide. But it's ripe for review now.
Okay. Has anybody else got any other questions at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. I think in terms of us, I mean, obviously this is work in progress. So maybe if we revisit this in about a year's time, and we'll be able to see what progress you're making on the various things and whether you've got metrics in place and how that's going to come about then.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, if coming back in a year's time, if we then had more on the impact, because this has been more of the introduction of the first year and what we've been able to do. If we can bring more of the impact next time, that would be fine.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. So Scrutiny Performance Panel Progress Report. This is the Climate Change and Nature Scrutiny Performance Panel. Councillor Sarah Keaton has sent her apologies. There is one member of that board here, which is Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald. But has anybody got any questions on this report at all? Wendy's hoping they haven't, I think. No?
I haven't got much of a voice, Chair.
No, exactly. In that case, we don't want to ask you any questions, Wendy. We don't want to strain your voice any further.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. In that case, as everyone happy with that report, I'm going to take that as a send. So I'm going to move on to the membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. The report is in front of you. We've setting up our working group on community growing, and the membership is set out in the report. Councillor Michael Locke has volunteered to chair the working group meeting after we asked everybody if they were interested. So can I have the committee's approval to appoint Councillor Michael Locke as the chair of that working group? Yes, okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. So that working group can get underway, and Michael Locke can start the work on before we bring that back to us. Is anything else on that particular report? No, in that case, we move on to the Scrutiny work programme. Can I just start by thanking everybody who went on the training and development programme. It was proved very valuable. And I think, as Bridge said in the pre-meeting, there are a number of recommendations from that which can help us improve the scrutiny process, which we're going to be looking at. So just to note, the scrutiny inquiry and community assets is underway. We have had a public request for scrutiny on 5G rollout, but legal advice suggested to us that wasn't appropriate because planning is not an executive function, and so we've passed that back to the basically to the planners to deal with that particular item. And so the next meeting on the 19th of March is going to look at the annual complaints report. And we also got the Welsh Language Standards annual report coming in front of us then as well. So we're looking forward to that. Has anybody else got any points or questions on that particular report? No, in that case, I shall move on to scrutiny letters, which are there for information, and the date and time of upcoming scrutiny panel working group meetings. Unless anyone has anything else, I'm going to declare the meeting closed, and thank you very much for your attendance and your participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.